Hello plant friends, it's Alonia here and welcome to my tiny balcony here in suburban Sydney where I'm learning to grow cold, cool and intermediate orchids without the help of any grow lights, greenhouses, humidifiers, etc. It's just me, my orchids and Mother Nature. If you're new here, welcome and thank you for pressing play. I'm a novice gardener and I'm a novice orchid grower and I am having a great time learning how to grow these beautiful plants. The astute of you may have noticed that this is not an orchid. So why on earth do I have a ginormous cactus on my balcony? That's a very good question, and it is the topic of this week's discussion. One of the many things that has caused me some consternation while I've been scrolling on online forums, Facebook Marketplace, Gumtree, eBay, etc., is the sheer volume of advertisements for an orchid cactus. And this is an orchid cactus. While I was looking at the images, I started wondering why it was called an orchid cactus. It doesn't look like an orchid. The flowers are quite unorchid-like when you look at the flowers for this thing. Now, my mother has an epiphyllum. That's the other name that I see these listed under. And I have grown up with one of these since I was a little kid. So when I went back to New Zealand a couple of weekends ago, sure enough, there on her front porch is an epiphyllum in full flower. Hers is a red variety. I don't know if it has fruit or not. These things do have fruit, which I'll talk about a bit later, and it's doing very well on her front porch. Now, even as a youngster, I knew these weren't an orchid. My parents had some good friends, and the wife of this couple was a master orchid grower. She was growing all types of orchids in all types of environments in her backyard, including in the greenhouse, in the pond, in the drain pipes of the house. They were growing out of the spouts, out of the spouts, and in the garage, on the porch, under the porch, everywhere she was growing orchids. Sometimes Auntie Janet would even let me help out when it came to the orchids, so I was allowed to take them out of pots. I was allowed to try and help separate them. I was allowed to sweep up some of the mess that she made. So I learned very early on that this is not an orchid. It wasn't until I moved to Australia that I came across this term, and I was wondering if it was a weird Australianism. There's some weird terminology here. These are two totally different species. So I thought, why on earth is this named an orchid cactus? So when I Googled the term orchid cactus, it's known as this as a global kind of name. So the cactus genera epiphyllum with a capital E is referred to the species type of this form of cactus. The name epiphyllum comes from the Greek epi meaning of the and phylum meaning of the leaf, which refers to the flowering habit of the flower sprouting from some of the points on these leaves. And to me, this is quite unorchid-like. I have not seen an orchid yet that flowers directly off the leaf like this. There are 10 species plants native to Mexico and Central America, and 6 of these are found in Mexico. The leaves of the epiphyllum are typically broad, wavy, and they are flexible and slightly rubbery in nature. You may flick. Some of these are like 70 centimeters long, so quite large. The flowers are large, between 8 and 16 centimeters in diameter, come in a range of colors from white through to red, peach, apricot, pink, and yellow. Some of them also flower at night, with the flowers being wilted by morning. And the species plants typically also bear fruit similar to a dragon fruit. Conversely, the only species of orchid that will produce a edible fruit is a vanilla orchid. Epiphyllum are a true jungle cactus and can be found growing on the jungle floor right alongside bromeliads, but they are also epiphytic, so they will grow like orchids in the nooks and crannies of trees. Thus, that is a similarity they have with orchids. This is a species, I believe, because if I turn him around and drop him down, he's extraordinarily heavy. On this leaf he has got a little fruit, and I will put a close-up of that here. And as this ripens, it will turn red, and it is edible. And when you cut it open, it will have seeds very much like a dragon fruit. Now, Brandon, not in flower currently. Brandon, I'll tell you the story about that in a moment. But Brandon has red flowers, and I know that because he came with a spent flower off the fruit, and that was red. Now, I do have a paragraph I've written here that I am just going to read out. I do have my laptop, so I'm just going to read this off here. The plant group known as epiphyllum hybrids, which are widely grown for their flowers, are artificially derived breeding programs and plant husbandry from closely related tribe of plants, the Hylocereae. I think I'm saying that right. Particularly the species of cactus. In spite of the common name, the involvement of the species epiphyllum as a parent plant is still unconfirmed at this stage. So epiphyllum, how do I keep this one? Well, I keep this one, it's planted in a ginormous plastic container, and he lives just over there in front of the wall. Generally, the wall provides a lot of bright shade. I water it once a week or so with just a little bit of water, and I do have some specific succulent fertilizer that I put in. I like the orchids, I flush it every couple of waters, and he does get some extra nutrients of magnesium, some calcium. I occasionally put some sea salt plant tonic through the water as well, just to keep him happy, and he seems to be doing okay. I have not seen any pests, although I am aware that if these things are planted in the ground, snails and slugs love them. So if you do have one and you live not on a first floor balcony like I do, but live on the ground where slugs and snails can get up the pot, please be mindful that they will attack this. They particularly love those flowers. This one has had a slug at it. The lady I got it from lived on a ground floor balcony, and I pulled a slug off of this when I got it. So that's an epiphyllum or an orchid cactus. Nothing aside from the growing habit orchid-like about it, really. But he is pretty. Oh, how he got his name Brandon. So when I brought him home, I told my husband that I'd been doing a bit of reading about this particular plant and why I was getting it, which was this video. And we were putting it in the car, and he said, "What's that fruit on it?" And I said, "Well, I think it's related to a dragon fruit," which it is. And he said, "Is it a dragon fruit?" And I said, "No, but it fruits like a dragon fruit." And he said, "So this is Brandon, son of Bruce," because bad into the pun, my husband, seriously. So the plant is now called Brandon. My husband calls him Brandon and refers to, I'm going to move Brandon out of the way. So Brandon it is, son of Bruce, son of the dragon. I've got nothing. Okay, so this is the epidendrum, and this is the orchid part of the equation. Now, I bought this specifically for this video. I don't particularly care for this form of orchid at all. But here we are. I now have two of them, and whether or not I keep them is another story. They're not particularly well potted. I bought them like this, and I'm watering them. They're growing for me, but I don't like them. The species or the family, the genera of the epidendrum, epi meaning upon and dendrum meaning tree. So again, another Greek derived word. This refers to an epiphytic growth habit. Now, this genera, there are over 1,100 different species and or hybrids in this particular genus. When Carl Linnaeus named this in 1763, he included all of the epiphytic orchids known to him. These days, with DNA, with reclassifications for orchids is happening almost every hour of every day, it seems. Very few of the original species that he included in the genus of epidendrum has remained. but still 1100. That's a lot of separate plants in one genus. Just to keep it confusing, there are quite a number of epidendrums that are not epiphytic, but more terrestrial in their growth habit. And yep, I'm confused. So all I know is that epidendrums are a crucifix orchid, and crucifix is in relation to the habit of their stalks here. So we have a single stalk with leaves coming out looking rather like a crucifix. I don't see it, but anyway, someone did. And this one, the flowers have turned. It's not particularly pretty, but this still has quite a lovely inflorescence on it. They are mostly native to the tropics and subtropical areas ranging from North Carolina all the way through into South America, into Argentina. And their habitat ranges from being lithophytic to epiphytic to terrestrial, so they cover all of the major growth habits. And they grow at altitudes from about 1,000 meters all the way up to 3,000 meters, so cool to warm growing. And their habitats can be jungle, can be dry fields, can be forest, can be cloud forest. So also a wide range of actual habitats at various altitudes as well. Depending on the species and where you are, these things can be very, very fast to grow and colonize areas like where they're being cleared for, say, demolition. Anywhere where the earth is disturbed and they can get a foothold, these things will take over very, very rapidly. Now, when I mentioned there are over 1,100 separate species in the crucifix genus, there are so many reclassifications. I am not going to go into any of them at all. This is just a general overview of an epidendrum, and it's meant to be a way of learning to identify the basic plant. Now, when I was reading about these things, because when I got a flower in my hair, little flower, okay, it can stay there. Okay, so when I was reading about these things, I was actually quite surprised to learn that some of these species grow up to 6 feet tall, which is very, very tall. Now, given there are a huge range of these things, the care can be quite different depending on what you have. And for these ones, I don't know what these are. They are a no-name thing I bought for $10 each off Facebook Marketplace. And I just Googled up care for epidendrum, and so I give them bright shade, dappled sunlight, regular water. They have no pseudobulbs, what to speak of. They are off a central stem. They have lots of spidery roots that just grow all over the place. So these things, actually these ones, I found they like quite a bit of water. So I water these almost every day. And if I don't water, I at least spritz with demineralized water early in the morning so that they can dry off throughout the course of the day. It's been very hot here in Sydney this last week or so, with today getting back down to about 24 degrees Celsius. It's quite cloudy out there now, so it's fairly cool, which is much better for me. Now, after flowering, I'm going to cut these flower spikes off, and as the summer comes into autumn, I'm going to ease back on the watering, and I will give them a slightly drier winter period where I water maybe once a week, once every 10 days. But this one here has a couple of new growths. So I'll show you the new growths here. So there's one little new growth in here, and there's one just here, and there is another one just about here. So this one is growing quite well. I don't particularly like the form itself. For me, it's too straggly, and this needs containment, and I just don't have the interest in looking after this. But since I bought it, I will see it through, I will repot it, and I will look after it. Since one of these inflorescences is out, I'm going to take and I'm just going to cut it off just above the final leaf there. Oh look, there's another little new one just here, very new, poking out the side. This These things apparently cakey, so I don't know, really, I don't know anything about these other than I'm going to water it, I'm going to fertilize it, I'm going to take the dead flower spikes off, and I'm going to dry it out a little bit over winter. Epidendrums do prefer warmer climates, but they can be acclimatized to a cooler climate provided you take the time to acclimatize them before you just decide to put them out in 40-degree heat. I was told these ones grew in Sydney outside, so I was able to bring them home and put them straight outside. I didn't have to find a place in my home to accommodate what I think personally is an ugly plant. If you love these things, that's great. Please grow them. Please let them flower. Enjoy the lovely tall inflorescences that bob around in the wind. Very smiley. I just don't like what's going on here. Not my cup of tea. And this one has got, damn it, polystyrene. Ugh, yuck. Also, the planting media in the pot only comes up to about here. So it's just a little over half full. So this needs a repot, which I will repot it. But again, I don't know how long I will keep this one for. I also think it has a fungal infection, so I'm now going to have to treat for a fungal infection. They do like to dry out between watering, but be careful not to let them dehydrate, which is why I do spritz this between watering. So these things have been known to flower 2 to 3 times per year, and they can flower at any time per year, but they typically flower in spring through summer. So the terrestrial forms do well in a rich humic mix. So when I repot these, I will repot them in bark with a good handful of compost and some orchid mix, which has got a little bit more fibrous material in it. I bought 3 plants for this video, and I am not keen on epidendrums. They are just, to me, they are not aesthetically pleasing. And I don't want to keep them either, but I would like them to go to a good home. And they'll be fine here with me, but I just don't want to keep these. So if you live in Sydney and you would like to own an epidendrum, and I will repot it into a much nicer pot than this, please, and you live in Metro Sydney, please comment below of why you would like to own this orchid and your postcode. I will do a draw on the 28th of December and whatever day that is, and I will arrange to get the orange and the red epidendrum to you. So plant friends, that brings us to the end of another video and an overview of the difference between an epidendrum and an epiphyllum. If you would like to follow along on my adventures, please do press the subscribe button below with a notification bell turned on so that you can be notified every time I upload. But for now, thank you for watching, and we'll see you all on the next one. Bye.